There's a cat that lives across the way. He's a killer cat. He got 5 of my birds a year ago, and he also, this year, got 2 or 3. I chased him with the birds in the mouth, and you can't get him. And I happened to be in Maine, and I saw this picture, and I thought it looks just like this killer cat, only very supercilious. Last Christmas, the family members clubbed together and got me my new phone. It's a dinosaur. And guess what? It roars. Then I found this Patriot at the biggest yard sale in the country, and I bought it. Well, then I embroidered the little banner, and I had to go to Bucks County to find the shade for it, but it's quite unusual. I got this rooster teapot from the family members for my birthday. I like animals, and this is called Gertie the gorilla, and she lives with me. I embroidered this mitt. It's a cow jumping over the moon. When I moved here, I decided to clean this room. And I cleaned the walls, and when I got up the next morning, everything was on the floor. I had cleaned too good. And so what could I do? I painted murals. I got old posts and had them cut in two. I put a new ceiling on. I had a new floor put in. There was not even a stove here, and so I fixed the place. When Dr. Mentir died, I went to the auction of his furnishing, and I found this collage done by Eunice. I like it very much. And below it is a picture of Stevie. This chair really belongs to a great niece of mine, and it is from her father's family. It was in a home, maybe 100 years old, and it needed to be taken care of. And I said, let me fix it. I hand rubbed it and put a new cover on it, and I want her to have it because it should be. It's a very valuable chair. This is a needlepoint that I designed and did, and I was going to make it into a coat for myself, but it got too big, and so now I framed it, and I call it the Sisters. Notice the difference in the coloring of the skin. This is the Lord's Prayer, and I found it at an auction, and it's 100 years old. There was a newspaper with it, and I have that in the back, and I thought, how can I frame it? And I cut it out, and the crochet is done by my mother, and I had it framed. This is a pastel painting done by Eunice. I think it's one of her best ones. The Pennsylvania station in Ridgway was built in 1907, and Eunice did this painting. As a matter of fact, some years ago I tried to buy it. I thought it has heat and water in, and I thought it would make a wonderful doll museum, and then I would have banners of dolls and a lot of flower pots and painted. It would have been a very nice museum. When I was younger, I would have had more energy to do it. This painting done by Eunice is very startling. It has been admired greatly. Eunice did this painting also of the family, and she did a lot of family paintings. We were always having picnics. I suffered a fracture in my leg when I moved here. As a matter of fact, I had quite a few fractures since I have moved here. I would just walk too fast. And I did this for the centennial. Eunice created this collage. It's called The Family. She also painted this as the Maria Lutheran Church in Dagus Mine. And I had a great-grandmother who was a midwife who came from Sweden when she was a widow. And when I did community nursing, people, some of the old-timers still remembered her. She was quite a feisty woman. And she had this perfectly beautiful voice. And when she attended church, everybody, and sang, everybody would stop singing just to listen to her. And not one of us in my generation has this voice. But in the next generation, no, in 2 more generations, 2 young women may make out very well. They have beautiful voices. I made this when I was a teenager, so at that time I must have liked to embroidery. It's a cross stitch, and it's called a Swedish tapestry. This chair has an original design of mine, and I did the needlework. Above it is a creation done by Dawn Granche of Ridgway. Above it is a song, Marie My Marie, that was created by Vicki and Carolyn. And to the left are designs by Amy Mentier, and she really has a gift. I found this bed in Ridgway. There used to be an old house, and it had McKinley's picture in the window. And one time during the war years, I went by, and after the owners had died, I saw somebody walking back and forth in the house. So I rushed home and baked a cake and brought it down, and it was a great niece. And I said, "Do you have anything I could buy?" And she said, "Cliffy has been here. He bought everything in the house." "Oh," I said, "you ought to have something." And she said, "Go out in the barn." I went out in the barn and I found my bed. I've only seen it once in my lifetime. It was in the movie Our Town. And I hand rubbed it for 10 days. Almost had a heart attack on that. But it is charming. My grandfather was Swedish, and he made these 2 chairs that are in this bedroom. And my mother made the seats. She wove material. I call this my doll room. These are cartoons done by my sister Sarah Sally Carrier. And I'm very enchanted with them. This is a life-size doll, and I had made satin pajamas for it, and I had it outside the bathroom, and it would startle people. A woman came calling from the Northeast, and she said, "I'm going to give you my wedding gown." And she did. And this woman died of a broken heart. She was a teacher, and the last year that she taught there, they asked her to stay one summer to help them out, and of course she said yes. She had always gone to Florida every summer with her husband, but he went alone, and he met someone, fell in love with her, came back and asked for a divorce. She gave him the divorce, and she cried every day and could not eat for 2 months, and she died. This is a sketch of Sally done by Eunice. Sally was the youngest in the family, and we considered her like a doll, a living doll. This is a doll of Sally that I found and made the gown, and it looks just as I remember Sally when she was a little girl. This room was black and had orange, and so I decided I would paint the floor black and match the design to the cloth that I put around the windows, and I used wallpaper on the rest of it. Incidentally, I took care of a niece, Ada, when she had lobar pneumonia. I think I really did save her life then. And Jeannie said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want that light fixture." And so I got the light fixture. I went to a sale on Hyde Avenue, and I found a semi-antique rug, and I purchased it. It was at the time that people wanted wall-to-wall carpeting. It was a beautiful rug. Afterwards, the family knew they had done wrong, and so, of course, I let them have it again. And I couldn't afford another rug, and I thought, well, I'll paint a rug on the floor. And I did. I painted it in a medieval design to go with the wallpaper that I put on. Jean gave me this brass bed, and I thought, I'll have that made into a sofa. And the elderly gentleman that did help me with it put it together so that you can't take it apart. It goes with the house. You'd have to take it out the window and it'd be ruined. The painting above it was done by Eunice. It's quite erotic. And Sally said, "You're not going to show this painting." I said, "Certainly I am. It's going to really be a sensation at some time later on." I balance the painting with a religious one done by Rick Boney, the baptism. This vase over there is really a perfectly beautiful vase that I bought from the woman who was a collector and would call me. This is the other painting that was given to me by the bank with the understanding that I cannot sell it. I painted the screen in a primitive manner, but I think it goes very well with my floor. This is the other chair that belongs to the young great niece of mine. And the upholstery is cloth that's hand loomed from South America. This wooden niche is from a church in Canada, and I bought it. I had it stripped, and then I found someone who had put it together for me. And I went to Maine, and my brother-in-law said to me, "Marie, would you like to go rocking?" I didn't know what he meant, and I said yes. He said, "Don't ask me to do anything." And so we went, and that day I fell in love. I fell in love with rocks. I found this big piece of mica, and it's a better specimen than the one in Washington, and I only had a skirt on. I had that and other rocks that I had loved so much, and I couldn't walk. So I lay down on the road and I said, "Help, help." And he thought I had fallen. He came running and he carried that home. Then when he got home, he knew I wasn't hurt, and he wouldn't talk to me for 2 days. This etching, this appears to be friendly to the rug that I painted. It has a medieval theme. I went to an art show down in Pittsburgh, and I saw a beautiful dragon, but he wanted $1,500. I couldn't afford it. So I bought this little one, and his jaw's open and it will attack you if you're careful, or careless, put it that way. I'm a collector of dolls, and these are a few of my dolls. I have some stored away. I collect banks, and I collect dolls, and I collect beaded bags, and I collect old clothes. You name it, I'm a collector. I have made many quilts, and this is one that I did design and do. And then I went to the retired people, and they quilted it for me in Ridgway. I have another one that is a different shade and different appearance. This is a painting that was done by Ridgway, and he brought it, and I said, "Oh, that's too big. I don't have room for that in my house." But afterwards, I shifted things around, and yes, it's just right for this room. And it's called, I'm trying to think what it's called. And it's escaped me, I'm sorry. It's called The Virgin. And you know, at my age, it's very apropos. I had professionals put the paper on, and I had never wallpapered, but I have this huge ego. After they left, I paid them and they left. I wasn't satisfied. Of course I wasn't satisfied. I shouldn't have selected this kind of paper for this old house. Nothing is even. And so I tore off the paper from one wall and part of another wall. I couldn't do any better. And what could I do? I decided to paint tulips on it so it takes your eye away from the defects. And that's what I've done. You will see over the bed a design that I made, and I've done the embroidery. This took a lot of time. I was in Florida at the time, and I call it Alone in Bed, Lonely as a Bird on a Housetop, from the Bible. There is a small sketch of a young woman in a purple gown, done by Amy Mentier. I designed this chair seat to go with the room, and I wanted it a little different, which I think it is. And in back of the chair, you will see cartoons. Every New Year's Eve, I make a cartoon of what I think was unusual and different that happened to me that year. I didn't know how to finish this floor, and then I decided, well, I'll paint a rug on it, and I painted the floor to go with the wallpaper. It took me 2 weeks to paint, though, on my knees. I should have made a big design, and it would have been simple, but you never know when you start things yourself. Above the floor, I did an embroidered picture of tulips, and I wanted that for the rug on my floor, but it wouldn't lay flat. You know, you can't get everything that you want in Ridgway, and so I had to frame it. Above it is an oil that I did some years ago, and when Una saw it, she said, "Who did those clouds?" I said, "I did." And so that's the story of that painting. Behind it is embroidered map of New Jersey. I was 17 when I went into training, and I couldn't wait to meet life. And I had written to Johns Hopkins, and they said, you have to wait 6 months. Well, I couldn't wait 6 months. And so I went to Orange Memorial in Orange, New Jersey, and you will see I have embroidered myself in a little cap, and I have my hospital in the state of New Jersey. Over to the mirror, I have etched tulips. And Eunice came calling with this oil. And she said, "Marie, do you like this oil?" I said, "I love it." And she said, "You may have it." I said, "It gives a dash of color in this room." Amy sent me this box that she had designed, and I filled it with jewelry. Of course, that's junk jewelry. But I am a collector of jewelry, and I have practically a store of jewelry. By the door, I have a whip. In case somebody comes in this house, I'll take the whip and I'll slam it against them, you know. And I had moved here. My goodness, you won't believe this. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I thought, hey, if I didn't know better, I'd think somebody was in the kitchen. And I thought, you can be silly about yourself too. So I rolled over and went back to sleep. In the morning, I got up, and the back door was open, and they had taken a big collection of silver. It wasn't good silver. And so I thought, I'll fix them. I went and put three things on the door so they couldn't get in. And I slept down. Next night I slept downstairs. And I heard them come running down, and what they do, they run to the door and slam against it. But I had 3 locks, they couldn't do it. And they were so fast. I rushed out, put the light on, and you know, I still couldn't catch them. I knew who it was, I thought, but I couldn't catch them. I put cloth on the walls here, and then I made the draperies. This is not my forte because I didn't like to do that, but I did. And I went to the auction that Jean had and bought the cherubs for the back of it. I use this room for guests. I went to see Vivian in New Jersey, and I found this in her papers, this sketch of hers that was done by Jean many years ago, and it wasn't framed. I said, "Why, you won't save this?" I said, "Give it to me." And so I framed it, and that's, I think, a very lovely sketch of her. Below it is a sketch that Jean did of her home when she had her designing and interior design here in Ridgway. And below that is something that Eunice gave me. This is a design of a unicorn that I painted on the furniture. Unicorns like virgins, you know. This is a sketch that Eunice did of my mother when she was young. I found this lamp many years ago, and it looks like my mother must have looked when she was a little girl. My mother asked me what I would want her to do when she was living with me, and I said, "I'd like to have you have a picture taken of yourself," and that's the picture that she had. And the night before she became very ill, I had a program at school, and it was about nurses from all abroad, from England and Germany and all different countries. And when she walked down the hall, she just looked so beautiful to me. She had this blue dress on. And then the next day, she had a heart attack. When I was getting my master's, I'd go to this small museum off Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia. And I went to visit her 3 times. I really couldn't afford to buy this print, but I did. And then as soon as I had it, why, I was all right. And then this is called, the little figure underneath is called the pregnant man. Notice he's walking before his labor. And to the right over here, Sally, oh, incidentally, the pregnant man was done by Linda. And this sand sculpture was done by Sally, and it's called Greed. I'm a collector of posters, World War I and II artifacts, and many of these were given to me by Sally. I also collect buttons. I collect stamps. I collect practically anything. And you will see I have stamps here. These are books about the family. I have that. And I have autographs I collect. Mimi, my niece and godchild, called me very distraught one time. She had had a birthday party for one of the children, and the house burned down. And she said to me, I went to the doctor to get a prescription so it would relax me, and I went to have it filled, and there was someone in the drugstore that had been badly burned in the face. So I knew I was lucky, I was fortunate. No one had been burned. The house was. So after Dr. Mentir died and his things were put on auction to get rid of, Mimi had been married to James Mintier at one time. I called her and I said, I'm planning to go to the auction. What would you like me to get for you? She said, I want the dining room set for the children. And so I went to the auction. I stood there all day, and anyone that came, I said, and this would only happen in Ridgway, I said, don't bid against me. You know, Mimi's house burned down, and she wants this set for her children. No one bid against me. And it was very expensive because it was a beautiful set. And I waited until it got very, very low, and then I bid, and I got it. Well, then she sent her son and another young man with a truck to pick up this dining room set, and brought me this dollhouse. And I had no place to put it. It's a big dollhouse. I had an antique bed and chair there, and I gave that to Capsia, and then at least I have that. I think this puzzle is good enough for a prize, but it's such an ordeal to get it to any place. And so I've never entered it. And I said to Sally, I'm going to call this The Taming of the Dragon. And she said, you're not going to put a nude on it. Yes, I said, I am. But she liked it after she saw it. And you see, I have an angel, and I have the dragon who is tamed, and the Virgin. This is a chair that was given to me by Jean, and I thought, what can I do with that? And I thought, I know what I'll do. This, you know, it goes with my political chairs. I call it the Rats of the 104th Congress, and you will notice there that that Gingrich is there, and they're really demonizing Hillary, and all of them, they're the rats. Oh, and I sent a picture of that to Hillary, and she sent me an autographed picture of herself. My sister Jean said to me once, I have some beautiful paper that you could put on the walls of your bathroom. I said, no way. I'm going to use the letters I get from the congressman, and I have dozens and dozens of those, and I said, and also letters and different things that I've written to them and to the editor. This is one of my early paintings that I've done. It's in oil. Last year I decided I would get boxes so they'd be quite similar, and in here now I have over 104 boxes with things that I have saved. Trimmings for trees, you name it, what I have. And there's I also am involved with the forest and trying to protect the trees, and so I have all those papers and different appeals that I've made about the forest. And down here, these are two posters that Sally gave to me, and they're unusual, and so I had no more room but to put them in the stairwell for the attic. This is my Penguin car. It's a 1978 Ferrari. This is my 1970 Mustang, and I treat it like a baby. This is my Dragon car. It's a 1983 car, and I have the male dragon, the father dragon, and the other side the woman, mother dragon, and the baby dragon on the hood. I was in the library looking through the encyclopedia, and I saw Mary Lease, born in Ridgway. I never knew about her, and I thought, I'm sure no one else knows about her, not many, and so I'll write something up for the editor, but he didn't put it in the paper. So I thought, oh well, I have my house and I'll paint her. So I did paint her, and she was the spokesperson. She talked to as many as 5,000 and 6,000 men at a time, and she told them, grow less corn and raise more hell. And imagine, this was at the turn of the century. She was quite some woman. Amelia Bloomer had great impact in how women dressed. You see how she's wearing Bloomer gown there. And she also had one of the first women's magazine, a Lily. Elizabeth Blackwell always wanted to be a doctor. From the time she was a little girl, people would bring her birds that had broken wings. But remember, when she was young and growing up, women were supposed to have an enfeebled mind, and if you were educated, it would be hard on you. And so they wouldn't accept her. But she wrote to one place after another, and finally a little school in New York State said that if all the boys agreed to accept her, that she could be admitted. And everyone but one boy signed. Well, they ran after him and forced him to sign. But they never thought she'd come. She did come, and the first day was horrific for her because not even the women in the town wanted to give her a room. She didn't know where to go or anything. Finally, a professor took pity on her, and she was accepted. And she graduated first in her class. So she had to go to France to get her practical experience. And while there, she was taking care of a baby who had an infected eye, and that was before they had medication to control such things. And she developed infection in an eye and lost the sight of one eye. So she knew she couldn't be a surgeon. But she came back to the country and started a hospital in New York City. It's called Women's and Children's Hospital. Nobody came for weeks. Finally, she saw someone walking past. She said, I see you're having trouble with your back. And that's how she got started. Other women started to enter medical profession, and she had adopted a young girl who became a nurse and took charge of the hospital, and it became successful. The girl, Carolyn Lowther, is the one that met me in Philadelphia, or in Washington, and she's a Phi Beta Kappa, and she has her CPA, and she is a financial advisor now. We all know about Sally Ride. Sally Ride was a space traveler, and in 1983 she was a flight engineer for the Challenger. Above it is Rose Schneederman, and I saw a picture of Rose. She worked in New York City, and during lunch period she'd go out in the park and, of course, talk about the small children that were 8, 9, 10 years old, working for nothing, and the women were working for nothing. And she was being harassed by the people. She did go abroad, and she was responsible to some extent in having union laws and protecting women and for the children. And we all know about Rachel Carson. If you've ever read her book, Silent Spring, it's like poetry. It's beautiful. And, you know, she died young, really, relatively young, and of cancer, as a matter of fact. And, of course, you know, dioxin and DDT and all those were being used. And she said it would be accumulated in the body, and it has. And 30 years later, they still are finding it. Over here, we have Eleanor. And I saw Eleanor 3 times at the UN. You never looked at anyone but her. She really came into her own after her husband died. She really was very unique and unafraid. And I saw her come to my hospital. At that time, she had a little red roadster, and they didn't have anyone protecting them. She'd travel around, and the people just swarmed around her. And I was learning how to take photographs at that time. It was sort of a fun thing for me. And the only place I could see where I could get her picture with a group of people around her was stand on the toilet seat and snap it from a window. And you know, I got everyone but her. All the other hands were around touching her, but I never got her. And my doctor said, well, no wonder you couldn't stand on a toilet seat and try to get the picture of Mrs. Roosevelt. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was the daughter of a lawyer, I believe, and of a family of good resources, and she became interested in women's rights to vote. She married and had some children, and as a matter of fact, she was criticized badly because she was a permissive mother. And she would write, and Susan B. Anthony would give the speeches. Now, Susan B. Anthony had a proposal, but her aim in life was to get women to vote, to have the right to vote. And I'd like to read what Elizabeth said. She said, "We now demand our right to vote. The right is ours. Have it we must. Use it we will." Susan did vote, and she was arrested. And if you ever read the history of her life and read what she said, it is just so awe-inspiring. Barbara McClintock won the Nobel Peace Prize, but she had the jumping gene theory and had created that theory years before she was awarded the Peace Prize. She was in the 80s and was still working 12 and 16 hours a day. She said it would never work. She loved to be in the lab and loved to do her work. These 2 young women are women that will give to the world. They both were teachers. Now, Mimi has gone into interior design. It's just something spontaneous that she does. She designs homes, and you should see the house that she designed. Just wonderful. The person by her is Judy McCartney, and she's a teacher, still teaching, and of course they've all had children and had to work at home too part of the time, but they give to the world. Down below is Ada Colwell, and she has had 2 children. She was a dean of admission of a college. She is now the secretary of the plastic committee. Then Vicki Lawther was a teacher. She's a teacher, and she was the teacher of the year. My mother was a wonderful role model. Her name was Ada Nelson Loncoske, and people still remark about her even today, after many, many years after her death. She was very unique. I remember when I was a school nurse, this boy came in the room, I had a suite in rooms. Oh no, he's not going to come when Mama's here. He had been a problem. And listen, in a few minutes she had him eating out of her hand. I don't know how she did it. Below my mother, and look, she's blessing me a little bit. I was a 10-month baby for gestation, so I was strong, you know, and I have been strong all my life. I've been very fortunate, although I've had diseases like rheumatic fever and things like that. Anyhow, I'm wearing red shoes. They were red button shoes, and I remember those. I loved them when I was little. And my nom de plume is Marika. I did marry. It was hard when I went in training. The name Loncoske was rather unusual in that area, and I married someone by the name of Davis. Then I was sorry afterwards that I didn't keep my name because, you know, with the Russians I was going to call myself Mariska Loncoske. And Agnes, my sister, said, "You're no Mariska, you're Marika." And I've been Marika ever since. When Kate Wilson was born, she was in the hospital for, I guess maybe 5 or 6 days. And when she came home, her mother would take care of her in the daytime, and I'd take care of her at night time. And I've taken care of hundreds of babies, and this is the only baby that tried to talk back to me when she was just about a week or so old. And I've always said, she's really more than gifted. She's a genius. And you know, she is. Eunice was an artist and born in Ridgway, lived her whole life here, and painted hundreds and thousands of paintings. She also was a poet. Clara Barton was a very famous person. She was one of the first women to work in public in Washington. And when she walked into the building, the men hissed. And so she left finally, and then they knew they had lost someone very valuable. And she returned, and then she became interested in the Red Cross. And with her is a picture of my sister, Agnes, who was a Red Cross nurse. And the only man is a picture of my brother. She's holding a picture of him when he was in the Army. And the man that helped me put these on the house sent his friend here, who said, "Bill would like to get on the house, and he'll let his hair grow long." And I said, "You tell Bill," who was my friend, "that the only way he'll get on my house is if he has a sex transformation operation." Sacagawea was an Indian. She had been kidnapped by another Indian tribe and married to a Frenchman. And she became the guide for the Northwest Passage when they went there. And they said they could never repay her for all that she did. She saved the papers when the canoe overturned. And at that time she even had a baby that she was taken care of. Dr. Teddy Johnson was a woman that was born in Ridgway, raised here, went to Africa as a doctor, and served there all her lifetime. Harriet Tubman was a slave, and she was unusual even as a young slave. She rushed to the defense of a slave boy that was being beaten by her master. And what other slave would do that? She did escape to the north with the Underground Railroad, and then she went back to bring other slaves north. And she would bring them, and then she always carried a revolver. And they'd want to go back. They'd be halfway here, and then they'd want to go back to the master. And she said, no, I can't let you. I'll have to shoot you first because they'd beat you and you'd give away where the people are giving us a home. And she was quite unusual. The Statue of Liberty there was done by myself in 1976. Lieutenant Margaret Paff Nelson was a World War II nurse, and she was one of the unsung heroines. You can't see Babe Zaharis, but she's on the front of the building, and she was a very unusual athlete. She won all sorts of prizes. Rosa Parks started the civil rights movement. She refused to give up her seat. She was a brave woman. Margaret Sanger was a brave nurse. She was of Catholic religion and thought that her mother's life was very bad. And she did social work, and the women in New York City asked her to help them for family planning. And she went to jail about it. Finally went abroad and did get information and sent out leaflets. I was 20, almost 21 when I graduated as a nurse, and they sent me, they said, go to the Margaret Sanger Clinic and observe. And I always remember this young man holding the hand of his pretty little bride and saying, can you give me some family planning information? And the nurses said, we cannot until you have 2 children. And that was in my day. Okay. Megan Thurber is a very talented young girl, and I think she'll be a future scientist or something like that. These 3 sisters are talented young women, and they all have children, and one is a teacher, the other is a CPA, and the other is a legal secretary. They all give to the world. Vivian Lowther is an inspiring person. She inspires others to do the best they can. Julia Morgan is a designer, an architect, and she was the one that designed San Simeon. She only earned $70,000 from Hearst. Sally Carrier is a lover of nature and also a lover of people, and she gives of herself all the time. To the right is Edith Carlson Johnson, and she was also an unsung heroine of World War II. Below is Jean Caldwell, who is a decorator, still doing work, and beauty follows in her footstep, and her little grandchild is following her. Isadora Duncan was an expressive dancer, and at the time that she danced barefoot on the stage. Alice Paul had a dream, and that was that women would have equal rights. She devoted her whole life to that. It still has not been passed. There's always 1 or 2 states that will not accept it. Catherine Mayo was born in Ridgway, and she wrote the book Mother India. It caused a sensation because she wrote about the men in India marrying 9 and 10-year-old girls. Susan Butcher won the Iditarod several times. She did write to me and said she had 100 dogs in Oklahoma. She gives them special care and love. Jane Addams was a wealthy girl. She was able to influence her debutante friends to help at Hull House. She started Hull House, and she was really responsible in helping the immigrants when they came to this country. Dr. Elaine Isaacson Brown was born in Ridgway, and she was a conductor of the Singing City Choir from Temple. She went all over the world. I enjoyed having you so much. Do come again. Thank you.